Stories of atrocities on both sides are rampant. Tales of outrage that demonize the enemy. The soldiers were promised that the war would be over by Christmas, but in reality, the Western Front has become the deadliest place on earth. The fighting will not be over in just a few months. 15 million, I repeat, 15 million soldiers will die between 1914 and 1918. Disaster is impending, and there seems to be no way to avoid it. In the weeks leading up to Christmas, German, British, French soldiers are sent Christmas presents from the home front to try and bring some Christmas cheer to the demoralized troops. There's an avalanche of letters and presents, food treats, tobacco, warm clothing, but their motivation to fight is slowly sliding away. For example, there's an Allied offensive on December 19th that has the opposite effect. There's massive casualties on both sides. The men are growing sick and tired of the war. Winter has set in. There's ice, there's snow. The weather is the real enemy for both sides of the war. There are more deaths from exposure and frostbite than enemy fire. Morale drops. And their will to fight is slowly zapped away. Trench foot is a serious problem. Their feet are endlessly wet. They become frozen. They turn black. Gangrene sets in, and then infection kills them. There's a deep sense of melancholia. These Christmas presents and these letters that are sent to the soldiers at the front simply make the troops homesick. High command sends warnings to their officers that the troops might let their guard down. The war has become obscured by the soldiers' thoughts of home and family. By Christmas Eve, the concerns of headquarters and the high command now seem prophetic, because something strange and remarkable is happening. Christmas Eve is the time when the German soldiers and their families present gifts to each other. The Germans begin to drink and smoke and start to offer good cheer to their enemies. The same spirit moves the men on the other side of the line, the French and the British, and their thoughts fly home to their wives and children. Along some portions of the Western Front, the German side of the lines, unusual lights begin to appear. The Allied soldiers are surprised and astonished to see the lights. They think the enemy is preparing to attack, then soon realize that the Germans are placing Christmas trees adorned with candles on the parapets. Instead of rifle fire, come shouts from the German soldiers. Happy Christmas, English. Where are your Christmas trees? Now, Christmas trees, the Tannenbaum, is essentially a German tradition. It means a lot to them. And remember, these soldiers have been drinking heavily, and they are now in a very festive mood. The sound of singing drifts across no man's land. Silent night, holy night. The frontline soldiers have read the home press propaganda and laugh at the absurdities, these fantasies of the ineptitude and cowardice of the Germans, the bravado of the French who kiss their bayonets before charging into battle. The troops are irritated. They know how hard the struggle really is. The men opposite them are brave and determined and suffer like them. Cold, hunger, lice, rats, disease, mean-spirited officers. Each have shared knowledge of their own misery. Both sides see the smoke of cooking and observe the coming and goings of their daily lives. They share no man's land together. No man's land is a noisy, filthy maze of trenches, a diabolical landscape, a wilderness of the earth. The ground has been plagued by shell and artillery fire. Tree roots have been tattered all over the landscape. People you knew, people that were right next to you, are now bodies in bits and pieces that littered the ground. The smell is horrendous. Each side, every soldier shares this misery. A German soldier plays Handel's Largo on a violin, and a German band performs the national anthems of both Germany and Britain. The British respond with applause, cheers, and they begin to sing their own hymns. There's essentially a retaliation of Christmas carols instead of bullets and bombs. First the Germans sing one, then the British sing along, then they sing together, Adeste Fidelis, O come all ye faithful. This is an extraordinary event. Two enemy nations singing the same Christmas carol in the middle of a war. Even the massive killing and bloodshed of the conflict has not drowned out the fact that the men on both sides are longing for their home and their families. A German soldier suddenly appears, walking slowly through the living hell of no man's land. A Christmas tree adorned with candles is in his hand, and a massive smile is on his face. Nobody knows what's going to happen. The British are ready to shoot. The Germans stand up and wave their arms, screaming that men were not created by God to slaughter each other. And they slowly leave their trenches unarmed. They're not holding any weapons. The British leave their trenches. If the Germans can do it, we can do it too. All jump up and walk slowly towards each other. The British khaki and the German gray now mingle together. The men shake hands and hug each other. Enemies no more. Christmas Day is a day for peace to be declared, and the soldiers will declare it, even if the politicians and high command do not. The men have no idea that this moment of peace will resonate throughout history, a spiritual victory that will never be seen again. The soldiers have broken, shattered the propaganda mind frame. All are now equal. All are now children of God. They have created by mutual consent a little armistice, a symbolic moment of peace amidst the violence of war. The men are at risk from their officers. Their officers are their real enemy and opponent. Consorting fraternization, one step away from high treason, and these men may now face court-martial and execution. Now, some officers are understanding and sympathetic to the plight of the men, and actually take part or approve of the truce. They allow the Christmas truce to happen. These officers are also weary of the war and need a break in the conflict, a few days to feel human again. The Christmas truce is a very significant moment in history due to the number of men involved, essentially 4/5 of the entire Western Front, and the level of their participation. Millions of men openly congregate in the daylight on Christmas Day. They feel a growing need to live and let live. There's a rush of men that independently venture from their trenches and take excursions into no man's land and exchange small gifts, food, tobacco, booze, buttons, hats, chocolates, essentially schnapps for scotch. They look at and trade photographs of their families. But sadly, the reality of death must be dealt with. The retrieval of bodies. There are joint burial ceremonies. German and English dead are buried together because they are all fallen comrades. Both sides pay respects to the dead. The officers say words of Scripture, Psalm 23, once in English and once in German. And the soldiers play soccer together. The Germans versus the Scots. The Germans win 2-1. Artillery has fallen silent. The French have their own celebration. They celebrate a mass, an improvised ceremony, just 50 yards from the German lines. The floor of a barn with huge double doors is used as the background for the chapel. A wooden table with 2 candles stacked on bottles becomes a makeshift altar. The Germans do not fire a shot during the entire ceremony. Soldiers on both sides begin singing Christmas carols, all the songs they used to sing as children. The Christmases of their past have come to life again. The soldiers' minds are dazzled by their memories. And an unreal and sublime atmosphere dazzles their eyes. Now, the next morning, the Germans heave in the direction of the French and Belgian lines religious objects from the Church of Dixmude, which is on their side of the line. The soldiers everywhere along the Western Front at this point have no feelings of enmity towards each other. They all wish never to have to fire a shot ever again. The men go to sleep, wondering if they will go back to the slaughter, or will they get used to the idea of not fighting. They go to sleep wondering which of these two alternatives is going to happen. Now, commanding officers, the high command, the generals, hear of the fraternizations and order an immediate end to them. In other sections, the Christmas truce comes to a natural end. The men simply say goodbye, shake hands and wish each other good luck, and return to their trenches. Some soldiers hope and pray that the comradeship will extend into the new year and beyond. But others see it for what it really was, a reassertion of their common humanity and decency. Soldiers on both sides are not enemies, but men, human beings like themselves. The generals are, of course, appalled at the news of the Christmas truce and issue